You know that TikTok sound that goes, "You're probably wondering how I ended up here?" Yeah. Picture me, standing in a bathrobe in my new boyfriend's kitchen, when a familiar voice shouts from the hallway, "What the hell are you doing here?" I turn and it's my ex. The one who ghosted me. The one I cried over for weeks. The one whose dad I just kissed good morning. You're probably expecting me to fall to my knees, burst into tears, or at least try to explain myself. Nah. Instead, I do what any sane woman would do in my situation. I look him dead in the eye and smirk. Because let's be real, this wasn't a coincidence. Oh no. This? This was the universe's sick sense of humor, and I was loving every second of it. A peculiar art of accidental revenge. Hey, story lover. Welcome to the Narrative Hub, Reddit Stories. Believe me, this adventure gets wild, but it's only epic with you. Seriously, you make this possible. Want more stories? Greater adventure? Smash subscribe right now. Smash like. Comment below. Let's go. So let me rewind. And I mean really rewind, because this story doesn't start with Michael. It starts with my best friend Shayla pouring wine into my coffee mug at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, telling me I needed to get back out there after Jake destroyed me. 3 months before that bathrobe moment, I was a different person. The kind of person who believed in meant to be and thought ghosting was something that happened to other people. Jake had been my everything for 8 months. We'd talked about moving in together, about meeting each other's families, about forever. Then one day, he just wasn't there anymore. No text back. No returned calls. His social media went dark. I drove by his apartment, his car was gone, and his neighbor told me he'd moved out in the middle of the night. Like he was in witness protection or something. Like I was the mob boss he needed to escape from. I spent exactly 37 days in what Shayla now calls my feral era. Unwashed hair, ice cream for breakfast, and conspiracy theories about what I'd done wrong. Was it when I mentioned wanting kids someday? Was it because I laughed too loud at his jokes? Did I come on too strong when I said I loved the way he made his coffee? Shayla, bless her patient soul, let me spiral for exactly 5 weeks before staging what she called an intervention, but what looked suspiciously like her dragging me to a wine bar and deleting Jake's number from my phone. "Julia," she said, waving her Chardonnay like a magic wand, "you need to understand something. He didn't ghost you because you weren't enough. He ghosted you because he's a coward. And cowards don't deserve closure." That night, she made me download 3 dating apps. "Start with something casual," she said. "No pressure. Just remind yourself that there are men out there who actually know how to communicate." I swiped through profiles half-heartedly for weeks. 20-somethings with gym selfies, guys whose entire personality was loving the office, men who opened with, "Hey beautiful," like they were reading from a script. I was about to delete everything when Michael's profile popped up. Michael Richards, 48, architect. His photos weren't gym selfies, they were him at art galleries, hiking with what looked like an expensive camera, sitting in what appeared to be his own beautifully designed living room. His profile was thoughtful, funny without trying too hard, and refreshingly honest about being recently divorced and figuring out how to date in the app era. His opening message wasn't, "Hey beautiful." It was, "I noticed you mentioned loving obscure documentaries. Please tell me you've seen the one about competitive Scrabble players." It changed my life in ways I'm not proud of. We talked for 3 days before meeting. Actually talked about books, about travel disasters, about the weird anxiety of first dates after heartbreak. When we finally met for coffee, he was even better in person. Confident without being arrogant, funny without performing, and he asked questions like he actually cared about the answers. "You know what I like about you," he said during our second date, over dinner at a place I couldn't pronounce the name of. "You're not trying to be anyone else." It's refreshing. If only he knew how desperately I was trying to be someone else, someone who didn't check her ex's Instagram every night, someone who didn't flinch when unknown numbers texted her. Michael was patient with my baggage in ways that made me feel guilty. When I got weird about staying over too soon, he just smiled and said, "I'll wait." When I had a minor breakdown because a song came on that reminded me of Jake, he didn't ask questions. He just changed the station and kept driving. 3 months in, I realized I was falling for him. Really falling. The kind of falling where you start imagining futures and wondering if his toothbrush would look weird next to yours in the bathroom. It terrified me, but in the best possible way. That's when he invited me to meet his family. My son's visiting for the weekend, Michael said over breakfast at our favorite cafe. I'd love for you to meet him. Fair warning though, Jake can be a bit intense. He's going through his own stuff right now. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. Jake. I managed, my voice sounding like it was coming from underwater. Yeah, my son. He's 28, just moved back to town. Between you and me, I think some girl broke his heart recently. He won't talk about it, but he's been acting strange. Moody, secretive, you know how it is. I nodded numbly while the cafe employee swept up ceramic shards around my feet. Jake. His son was named Jake. But Jake was a common name. There were probably hundreds of Jakes in this city. Thousands, even. What's his last name? I heard myself ask. Michael laughed. Same as mine. Richards. Why? Jake Richards. My Jake's last name was Morrison. I was being paranoid, imagining connections that didn't exist. The universe wasn't that cruel. Except, apparently, it was. Saturday morning at Michael's house. I'd spent the night for the first time, and waking up in his arms had felt like coming home. I'd borrowed one of his robes and padded to the kitchen to make coffee, feeling domestic and happy and normal for the first time in months. That's when I heard footsteps on the stairs and a familiar voice saying, Dad, whose car is in the... Time stopped. Actually stopped. Jake, my Jake, the Jake who'd ghosted me, the Jake whose favorite coffee mug I'd thrown against my apartment wall in a fit of rage, stood in the doorway wearing nothing but boxers and a look of absolute horror. Julia. His voice cracked on my name. Behind me, I heard Michael's shower turn off. I had maybe 90 seconds before he came downstairs and my two worlds collided in the most spectacular way possible. Jake was frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I could see the exact moment his brain processed what was happening, his girlfriend, in his father's kitchen, wearing his father's robe. What the hell are you doing here? He whispered, like speaking quietly would somehow make this less insane. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. Instead of explaining, instead of panicking, instead of doing anything a normal person would do, I smiled. Sweetly. Like we were old friends who'd bumped into each other at Starbucks. Hi, Jake, I said, pouring myself coffee like this was the most normal thing in the world. You look well. His face went through about 15 different expressions before settling on pure panic. You can't, he can't, this isn't. Julia. Michael's voice drifted down from upstairs. Everything okay down there? Jake's eyes went wide with terror. I took a sip of my coffee and considered my options. Option 1. Come clean. Explain the situation like a mature adult. Watch Michael's face crumble as he realized his girlfriend was his son's ex and this relationship that had started to heal me. Go back to my apartment and resume my feral era. Option 2. See how this played out. I chose chaos. Just making coffee. I called upstairs, then looked at Jake with the kind of calm that comes right before a nervous breakdown. So, I said conversationally, how long are you visiting? Jake stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You're insane, he whispered. You're actually insane. Am I? Or am I just a woman who's learned not to let men dictate her happiness? Michael's footsteps sounded on the stairs. Jake grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in. You can't tell him, he hissed. It'll destroy him. He really likes you. The desperation in his voice was beautiful. This was the same man who'd blocked my number without explanation, who'd disappeared from my life like I was a mistake he needed to erase. Now he was begging me for mercy. Good morning, beautiful, Michael said, appearing in the kitchen and kissing my cheek. Then he noticed Jake. Oh, Jake, you're up. I want you to meet Julia. Julia, this is my son I was telling you about. I extended my hand to Jake like we were meeting for the first time. So nice to meet you, Jake. Your father's told me so much about you. Jake's handshake was clammy with panic. Nice to meet you too. Jake just moved back to town, Michael continued, oblivious to the tension crackling between us. He's been going through a rough patch. Some girl really did a number on him. I tilted my head sympathetically. That's terrible. Heartbreak is so hard. What happened, if you don't mind me asking? Jake's face went pale. It's complicated. Most relationships are, I said. Butter wouldn't melt in my mouth. Sometimes people just drift apart. Or disappear entirely. These things happen. Michael rubbed Jake's shoulder supportively. Jake's been pretty closed off about it. Won't even tell me her name. Some stories are too painful to share, I said, looking directly at Jake. Aren't they, Jake? He nodded mutely, looking like he might throw up. That's when I realized something that changed everything. I was enjoying this. The power, the control, the absolute cosmic justice of it all. For the first time since he ghosted me, I held all the cards. What followed was the most surreal 2 hours of my life. Michael made breakfast while Jake and I performed the most awkward small talk in human history. I asked about his job, freelance graphic design, apparently news to me. He asked about mine, consulting, which wasn't technically a lie. We talked about the weather, the football game last night, anything except the 8 months we'd spent falling in love before he vanished into thin air. Michael was delighted. You two are getting along so well, he kept saying. Jake's usually terrible with meeting new people. When Jake escaped to shower, Michael pulled me aside. I can't tell you how happy this makes me, he said, wrapping his arms around me. Jake's been so lost lately. It's nice to see him actually talking to someone. The guilt hit me then. Michael was a good man, kind, honest, everything Jake wasn't. He deserved better than to be caught in the middle of whatever twisted game I was playing. But when Jake came back downstairs, showered and dressed like he was going to a job interview instead of casual Saturday breakfast, and I saw the fear still lurking in his eyes, the guilt evaporated. I should get going, Jake announced, hovering near the door like he might bolt at any second. So soon. Michael looked disappointed. I thought we could all hang out today. Maybe take Julia to that art museum she's been wanting to visit. I have plans, Jake said quickly. Rain check. After he left, Michael sighed. I worry about him, you know? He's been so isolated since he moved back. Won't talk about what happened in his last relationship. I think whoever she was really hurt him. I made sympathetic noises while internally screaming. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Jay. I stared at the message for a full 5 minutes before responding. Do we? Please. Coffee tomorrow? The place on 5th Street. Our old place. Where we'd had our first date, our first fight, our last good morning before he disappeared. He was either sentimental or cruel, and I wasn't sure which was worse. I almost didn't go. I could have blocked the number, pretended the whole thing never happened, figured out some way to untangle myself from this mess. But I needed to know why. After 3 months of silence, I finally had the chance to ask the question that had been eating me alive. Why wasn't I worth an explanation? The cafe looked exactly the same. Jake was already there when I arrived, sitting in the corner booth we'd claimed as ours back when we thought we were building something permanent. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled, like he hadn't slept in days. I sat down across from him without ordering anything. You look like hell, I said. Yeah, well, finding out your ex is dating your father will do that to you. Funny, I said, you disappearing without a word had the same effect on me. He flinched. Jules, I can explain. Don't call me that. The nickname hit me like a slap. You lost that privilege when you ghosted me. I didn't want to ghost you, he said quietly. I had to. Had to? What does that even mean? Jake ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. My mom was sick. Really sick. Cancer. Dad didn't know how bad it was. She made me promise not to tell him. She didn't want him to worry while he was going through his divorce. I felt the ground shift beneath me. What? She was getting treatment in Portland. I moved up there to take care of her. I wanted to tell you, but she begged me not to tell anyone. She said she needed to get better first, then we'd figure out how to explain where I'd been. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too hot. But you could have said something. Anything. You could have told me you needed space, or that there was a family emergency. And then what? You would have wanted to help. You would have asked questions. You know how you get when people you love are in trouble. His voice cracked on the word love. I couldn't risk her secret getting out. And I couldn't watch you suffer while I fell apart trying to take care of her. So instead you let me think I wasn't worth a goodbye? Instead, I made the worst decision of my life. He leaned forward, his eyes desperate. Every day I wanted to call you. Every single day. But weeks turned into months, and how do you come back from that? How do you tell someone you love that you've been lying by omission for half a year? I felt tears threatening and hated myself for it. Is she okay? Your mom. She's in remission. Has been for 2 months. That's why I moved back, to be closer to both my parents. I was going to find you, Jules. I was working up the courage to grovel and beg and do whatever it took to get you back. And then I showed up in your father's kitchen wearing his robe. He laughed bitterly. Yeah, that pretty much torpedoed that plan. We sat in silence for several minutes. I studied his face, trying to reconcile the man who'd broken my heart with the man who'd sacrificed everything to care for his dying mother. Why your dad? He finally asked. Of all the men in this city, why him? It wasn't intentional, I said. I didn't know. He told me his son's name was Jake, but your last name in my phone was Morrison. That's my middle name. I use it professionally so clients can't Google my dad's architecture firm and think I got jobs through nepotism. Of course. Of course it was something that simple. So what now? I asked. Jake's laugh was hollow. Now I have to watch the woman I love date my father. Now I get to sit through family dinners and birthday parties and Christmas mornings watching you build a life with him. Now I get to live with the fact that my cowardice cost me the best thing that ever happened to me. Jake. He loves you, you know. Really loves you. He talks about you constantly. Julia this, Julia that. He's happier than I've seen him since before the divorce. Jake's smile was heartbroken. I can't destroy that. I won't. He's been through enough. I walked out of that cafe with more questions than answers. Jake's explanation didn't erase the months of pain, but it recontextualized everything. He wasn't a villain, he was a man who'd made an impossible choice and paid for it in ways I was only beginning to understand. But understanding didn't make it simple. I drove around the city for hours, my phone buzzing with texts from Michael that I couldn't bring myself to answer. He was planning a dinner for the 3 of us next weekend. He wanted Jake and me to bond. He was so happy to have found someone who made him feel young again. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. I had fallen for Michael precisely because he was everything Jake wasn't: stable, communicative, present. But Jake wasn't those things because he was selfish or immature. He wasn't those things because life had forced him to choose between the woman he loved and the mother who was dying. By the time I got home, I'd made my decision. I called Michael and asked him to come over. When he arrived, he took one look at my tear-stained face and immediately went into protector mode. What happened? Are you hurt? Did someone? Sit down, I said. Please. He sat on my couch, his face creased with worry, and I realized I was about to break a good man's heart. But the alternative, continuing this charade, watching Jake suffer, building a relationship on a foundation of lies, was worse. I need to tell you something about Jake and me, I began. The conversation was as awful as I'd anticipated. Michael's face went through the same progression of emotions I'd seen on Jake's: confusion, disbelief, hurt, anger. When I finished explaining, He sat in silence for what felt like hours. How long? He finally asked. 8 months. We broke up. He disappeared 3 months before I met you. And you didn't think to mention this when I said my son's name was Jake? His last name in my phone was Morrison. I didn't know he was your son until I saw him in your kitchen. Michael rubbed his face with both hands. This is... Christ, Julia. This is insane. I know. And you didn't tell me because... Because I was angry. Because I wanted Jake to suffer the way he'd made me suffer. Because for a few beautiful hours, I'd held all the power in a situation where I'd been powerless for months. Because I was hurt and confused and not thinking clearly, I said instead. Do you still love him? The question hung in the air like smoke. I could lie. I could say that whatever Jake and I had was over, that my feelings for Michael were stronger, that we could move past this. But Michael deserved the truth. I don't know, I whispered. I thought I hated him. But after talking to him today, hearing his side, I don't know what I feel anymore. Michael nodded slowly. Well, I guess that's my answer. Michael left that night, and I knew I'd never see him again as anything more than a friend. He texted me 2 days later to say he needed time to process, that he wasn't angry, but he couldn't continue a relationship built on such a massive deception. He was kind about it, which somehow made it worse. Jake called that same evening. Dad told me you came clean, he said without preamble. How is he? Hurt. But he'll be okay. He said to tell you he understands why you did what you did. And you? How are you? A long pause. Honestly? Relieved. The guilt was killing me. Jake, about us. About what you told me. Don't, he said quietly. Don't say anything you might regret. Take time. Figure out what you actually feel versus what you think you should feel. I've done enough damage to your life. I didn't hear from either of them for 3 months. Michael kept his word about needing space, and Jake respected my need to process everything without pressure. I went to therapy. I read self-help books. I had long conversations with Shayla about forgiveness and second chances and the difference between love and habit. It was Shayla who finally kicked my ass back into action. You're being an idiot, she announced over brunch for months after the kitchen confrontation. You love him. He loves you. His reasons for leaving were valid, even if his execution was terrible. What exactly are you waiting for? It's complicated. It's not complicated. It's scary. There's a difference. She was right, of course. I was hiding behind the complexity of the situation because admitting I still loved Jake meant risking everything again. It meant forgiving him for the months of pain, even though I understood his reasons. It meant trusting him not to disappear again. It meant being brave. I called him that night. Hi, I said when he answered. Hi. Are you free for coffee tomorrow? Our old place. A pause. Are you sure? I'm terrified, I admitted. But yes. We met at the cafe where we'd had our first date and our most painful conversation. This time, Jake looked like himself again, not the broken man from 6 months ago or the panicked one from Michael's kitchen. He looked like the man I'd fallen in love with, but older, wiser, changed by everything we'd been through. I'm sorry, he said before I could speak. I know you know why I left, but that doesn't make it okay. I should have found a way to tell you something. I should have trusted you with the truth. I was scared and overwhelmed, and I handled it in the worst possible way. I'm sorry too, I said. For the kitchen thing. For letting you think I was dating your dad as some kind of revenge plot. For not telling Michael the truth sooner. Were you? Dating him for revenge? I considered this. At first? Maybe. Subconsciously. But I really did care about him. He's a good man. He is. And he really cared about you too. Still does, I think. We sat with that for a moment, both of us acknowledging the collateral damage our love story had caused. So where does this leave us? Jake asked. I don't know, I said honestly. I know I love you. I know I understand why you left. I know I want to try again. But I also know that trust isn't something we can just decide to rebuild. It's something we have to earn back, piece by piece. Jake nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling, daily check-ins, whatever you need to feel safe with me again. I don't need grand gestures, I said. I need consistency. I need to know that when things get hard, you won't disappear. I need to know that I'm worth fighting for, even when fighting is complicated. You are, he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. You're worth everything. That was 6 months ago. We've been taking it slower than either of us wanted, but as fast as trust allows. Jake started therapy to work through his fear of burdening people with his problems. I started therapy to work through my abandonment issues and my tendency to create chaos when I feel powerless. We have dinner with Michael once a month now. It's still awkward, but getting easier. He's dating someone new, a kindergarten teacher named Beth who makes him laugh in ways I never could. He told Jake he's happy for us, that love is too rare to waste on pride or hurt feelings. Jake's mom knows the whole story now. She apologized for asking him to keep her illness secret, said she didn't realize the cost of her request. She likes me, which helps. She said anyone willing to accidentally infiltrate their family dinner must really love her son. We're building something new together, not the naive romance we had before, but something deeper. Something tested by separation and strengthened by truth. We know. Now that love isn't enough on its own, it needs communication, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable even when it's terrifying. I still think about those moments in Michael's kitchen sometimes. The look on Jake's face when he saw me. The decision to choose chaos over clarity. The way the universe brought us back together in the most impossible way. Maybe it wasn't coincidence. Maybe it wasn't the universe's sick sense of humor. Maybe it was grace. The kind that looks like disaster but is actually a second chance wrapped in chaos. The kind that takes broken things and makes them beautiful, not by erasing the cracks, but by filling them with gold. We're both cracked now, Jake and I, marked by the months we spent apart, changed by the pain we caused each other and the pain we survived. But we're also golden. And that, I think, makes us stronger than we ever were when we were whole.